Good evening, Randomizer fans, and welcome to the best and only sporting event that is going on in all of North America today and in the whole world. Nothing else important is going on. We have our open weekly race for Link to the Past Randomizer, P-Train, Signums, Sorcerer Finch, and Forgotten to Pay, all volunteering to run with a total crowd of about 22 or 23 the last time I checked. My name's Vatasia, and I'm joined today by Professor Renderer. How are we doing today, Renderer?
I'm doing fine. I actually have the results here. It's 25 runners.
Nice. Got some last-minute entries there right at the end of it.
Yeah. So, for those who are not aware, this is our open weekly. It's open. We don't have to go through escape unless we want to. Just for checks. And that's it.
Yep, open. We don't have to, again, it's checks, but otherwise, that initial sequence where we have to save Zelda doesn't apply, so it does look like our runners are off. You do see that at least Signums and Forgotten to Pay and Sorcerer Finch are all starting off at Link's house. They're going to at least do that first check, while P-Train starts off in Sanctuary and off to the races over to that very lucrative Kakariko village.
Yeah, and already we're seeing a couple of interesting sprite options for three of our runners. P-Train's running his bobblehead Link sprite, which is glorious. Signums, it's been a while since he was on, but he is still rocking his Clyde ghost sprite. And Sorcerer Finch is running Abigail from Stardew Valley.
One of the other things that this randomizer does randomize, in addition to all the treasure chest checks that we're getting right now, are also things like the tree pull and the bush crab drops that we're seeing. Both of which I'm seeing the tree pull and the bush crabs were looking like bombs, which is actually really beneficial, especially early game.
Having a bomb pickup is really, really nice if you're off of a tree pole in case you are running low. And we saw this earlier. P-Train from the Sankstar has picked up his first sword, and Sorcerer Finch has just picked up theirs.
One other thing to note, bottles are easily, it looks like we have an early bottle as well in that early check there with our uncle, giving us a bit of a bottle. Forgotten to Pay, doing something that is a little bit off brand, but not unheard of. We have ourselves a Houlihan set up.
Yeah, getting 225 rupees, and with no flippers, this makes a lot of sense to do it. Commonly, you see it's with cross keys, but sometimes you see it in open. If you're looking to do, if you're just not confident with having bomb money right from the get-go, or at least you want to forgo the hoping to find money.
It is a very safe way to do it, especially if you don't have flippers. It's a very easy setup. Oh, we have an ice rod, Thieves Town. There's our flippers, by the way. So very handy we did Houlihan. Not that you can't do Houlihan setups with the flippers. It's just the easiest setup, I think, is with those flippers right there.
Yeah. With flippers, your best bet is picking up a glove and then using a bomb, essentially bomb jumping over to that, like bomb jumping on the spot where you drop down into the back of escape as a way to cause that error in Link's Y coordinate, which is the important thing that makes the Houlihan trick work.
Yeah, I don't know if Chris Houlihan, all those years ago in Nintendo Power, thought that we'd still be talking about his secret room here, 30 plus years later?
Yeah, and Oliver just fighting a war mech, which is under the 7th encounter table in Tiamat's Bridge of Destiny.
All right, so our runners are now making their way through, again, the very dense Kakariko. This is a very common setup for everyone. there's going to be no surprises here. It's just about efficiency and moving through here. If someone forgets something here, I'd be surprised because this is almost muscle memory at this point for everyone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Did we get a map check? It does look like we got one. It looks like Tower of Hera is one of our 5-6, but all 3 crystals in the light world.
Yeah, that opens up a couple of options once we get them.
Yeah, nothing really open to us quite yet. We have a couple nice convenience items. The flippers does unlock a few more checks that it'll be interesting to see how our runners route that in together. We have bombs, we have a sword. We're in good shape to at least take on the initial challenges. We're not feeling completely naked anymore.
Yeah, that moon pearl though.
Oh, and that was a blind check on that. He's like, no, we're going to go ahead and check this. Kudos to P-Train. A lot of runners will opt to first check the item before committing the time to going through that race game because it is a bit of a time sink. But kudos to him making that call. It'll save him a little bit of time in the long run.
So we're going to now see the South Shore play from P-Train, heading over to Mini Moldorm Cave. This is the next open thing you do after CAC.
Worth noting that he opted to do Mini Moldorm Cave before doing the Drain the Swamp checks. So it's a little bit out of order from what I've seen most people. Oh, there's a flute. And a hammer.
On top of the Bombos medallion. Yeah, and some runners will tend to forgo the dam check and just head straight over to Mini Moldorm. It's an interesting to call that it's really dependent on the person if you agree on it. Sometimes you might be wanting to do it in case you want to head over to the left and you want to get Mini Moldorm Cave out of the way, heading before you head over to the desert. But with the case of the flutes over on P-Train's side, I think this will route nicely because all you want to do is flute to 6, and then you get that out of the way.
And we already have that sweet, sweet flute music. We do not have the mirror, so we don't necessarily have access to the right side of Death Mountain quite yet, or Tower of Hera, but man, we're just a couple items away from really blasting this seed wide open, aren't we?
Yeah, hookshot and mirror, like you mentioned. So Sorcerer Fin just going to go ahead and check the dam. 20 rupees inside the chest. It's going to go ahead and open up that floodgate right afterwards, with Forgotten Toupee being the last one to get that moon pearl.
I tell you what, I don't know about you, but early flippers always worries me a little bit. Always makes me think there's going to be some level of progression that we need on one of these flipper checks, either on Hobo or in the Waterfall Fairies. Maybe that's just paranoia from running way too many seeds in the past, but whenever I see early flippers, something screams at me, do those checks, because it's an early progression lockout at that point that is really easy to get.
Yeah, it's an interesting play. I totally understand the reasoning for it. Because with an early flipper check like that from out of CAC, also high boots off of mirror locked spectacle locked. But I get it. you either can either choose to get them early or you save them for later. And here goes P-Train, basically doing what I was mentioning earlier, fluting to 6. Won't get anything out of it, but it's totally fine. It's so early in the game, it doesn't really matter.
Getting a couple of individual checks right here. Forgotten to Pay is going to be checking Sahasrara's cave, or not Sahasrara's, sorry. Agina's. They're two old men. They look exactly the same. They use the same sprite. Come on, give me a break. But Agina's cave, which is a whole lot of money, which is nice if we're going to be doing Zora before long. But Finch is actually going to be showing us Ice Rod Cave as well.
Yeah, and with the fact that we don't have boots, especially considering it's mirror locked, there's no way for us to do that nice water walk. Although the flippers doesn't really make that a moot point. It's nice to get a bit of extra speed and a bit more control.
Yep. All right. So Finch is going to be doing the first to do with these flipper checks. First is Hobo. And I got to imagine everyone else is going to be shortly behind because we're starting to run out of locations here. Although we have not yet checked anything over in the Eastern Palace area. Either Eastern Palace proper itself or Sahasrara's closet himself as well.
Yeah. I feel that... these makes it. I get it. It's early as well, and it looks like P-Train is also going to be attempting to do it as well. So I think after this is done, we're going to have to see Eastern or Escape. One of the, I would say Eastern area before Escape.
I tend to agree. It does look like that all of our runners have the rupees necessary to go get scammed by Zora as we need to, which at this point we might as well. These are 4 checks up here, relatively dense, just a little bit of walking on water.
Yeah, I think going ahead and doing this play makes a lot of sense. Just because of the fact that we got a lot of money early on, with Forgotten Tupe having the most amount of money here at 1229 or 1228. I can't really tell from the quality here.
Yeah, Houlihan wasn't all that necessary this early, as it turns out. This seed threw money at us right and left.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, at least it's nice to have it just in case you need it, like to top up on bottles, or in some degree. Oh, and not a scam. We have mitts or gloves rather.
And with that, that's the Moon Pearl, gloves, and hammer. That is our Dark World access. So not a scam at all. Very happy we got all that money. Although, like I said, early flippers. Always do your flipper checks, man.
Yeah, and in this case, the flipper checks did end up being the correct play, and it also is required. So, it also, well, not necessarily able to get into Swamp yet, but we are getting kind of close to Ice.
You shut your dirty mouth there. We're way too early to talk about Ice Palace.
Yeah, especially considering there is no cane for Icebreaker, which makes it a lot easier. But it does, but it is a possibility should it come up.
You're not wrong. That's the problem, because we have Bombos and we have the flippers. All we need is the Titan's Mitts. Honestly, at this point in time, like at this point in the game is when I least want to see Titan's Mitts right now. While it's nice and it opens up some certain parts of the game, it opens up almost too many checks, especially those late dungeons, Ice Palace, Misery Mire, Turtle Rock, that personally, as a runner that is not all that comfortable and confident in my play after, a break for 2 years, going in there with green mail 6 hearts sounds about like the worst idea on the planet. So I do not want to see those Titan Smiths whatsoever.
And I mean, I totally understand if in that case, just that bit of uncomfortableness regarding like such a low percent fights. Personally speaking, considering that I had to deal with a hard randomizer, not a hard randomizer, a co-op randomizer that had code stare on Desert Palace with only 5 or 6 hearts, blue mail, and a fighter sword. I'm okay with a low percent fights in this case, just mostly because of just my experience. And it doesn't scare me. I do play passively in those situations. Also, we have a map check. We have the 5-6 on ice, and then pennants on swamp, thieves, and Turtle Rock, I think.
Yeah, that's correct, with the green pendant being in Thieves Town. So that does make me wonder if we're going to see a full Thieves Town check. P-Train is opting not to go into the Dark World yet. He's checking out the eastern area. I didn't see if he got anything too much of value from the closet, but otherwise looks like he's about to enter his Dark World checks right now too, coming at it from the south as opposed to Kakariko Village.
Yeah, this is of course the Hype Cave starts, and Sorcerer is going to go ahead and do the Village of Outcast start along with Signums. However, this is not a Village of Outcast start. It is a Skull Wood start, and that's what makes this opening route interesting. 3 of our runners had to activate the flute, so they were led into the Village of Outcasts area, while P-Train, since he's already had the flute from the off, can safely do this Hype Cave play, which is just Hype Cave. We don't speak of Hype Cave.
What happened to my precious Hype Cave? What did the programmers do to it? My God.
I don't know, blame Dante. But so Thieves Town plays for a sorcerer. Now, the green pennants, the green pennant Thieves Town is chat is always mentioning is always the most interesting one, because you have to make that decision on the fly as to whether or not you want to continue through. But with that bow and book that we got, I might be inclined to just maybe leave. And the mitts, no less.
Yeah, and looks like Finch is going to be taking a death warp to get out of there. There's only 4 items normally in Thieves Town anyway, so if we got 4, or if we got 3 out of the 4, not including whatever the green pendant is, I'll take my chances abandoning one thing at that point in time. I'm perfectly content doing that, especially with how quick and efficient we were able to do it. It'll be interesting to see if any runners actually completes it, and if that ends up being beneficial, because I tell you what, it's going to be a long time before Finch ends up coming back to check those. Once you abandon something as a rando runner, you kind of write it off and say, if I lose the race here because I've abandoned this check, so be it. I have to take that gamble.
Yes, it's definitely the case here with Thieves Town being front loaded at 4 items, no less. And with an additional 5th from the green pendants, leaving this one out makes a lot of sense. And it's French vanilla mitts, bow, book. You have Eastern clearable out of logic, but it is still clearable. It's a crystal Eastern Palace.
Well, and Sorcerer is going to be able to do the Jeremiah World Tour right now as well, picking up our buddy. P-Train already has kind of done these South Dark World checks that Sorcerer is doing right now, but Sorcerer being able to pick up the frog in the process will be able to get a little bit more efficiency out of the whole deal. We ended up getting the Titan's Mitts, which you said was going to happen. It does unlock, of all things, Ice Palace, which I know the runners don't necessarily want to do, especially without the Cane of Samaria to get that good Icebreaker glitch. But doesn't mean it might not still be required.
Yeah, and it also, considering with that Thiefstown play, I already mentioned it. Eastern Palace is open. We also have Desert Palace that we can enter but can't clear, and of course that Ice Palace move. But also we could if Myers Bombos enter it, but again not clear it.
I am curious where a couple items are. Logically speaking, I'm still looking for the lamp, just because we do have a lot of dark rooms that are ahead of us, and I want to know logically where the seed at least intends for us to go through all of this, because it doesn't intend for you to necessarily go through any dark rooms without the lamp, but of course our runners are certainly capable of going through that. I just like to know for logic's sake. It's interesting because you're right. We have a lot of dungeons that we can clear, or at least mostly clear. Ice Palace is the one that we can full clear. That'd be super annoying to have to do it. There's no good options right now. Although, we have so many overworld checks right now. It feels, hey, let's just knock out all these overworld checks and take stock afterwards.
Yeah, and this is the thing when you get an early mitts, especially after a hammer glove dark world access, and you already mentioned it. It's the fact that the game gets blown open wide. There's so much stuff you can do, and it opens up the opportunity for a lot of different, divergence from route divergences, from all the forerunners. It's yes, and also to answer a question from our tracker, Mr. Scrub Ninja Tuna, the book was in Thiefstown. So, and as we're seeing here, and you already mentioned it, Sorcerer is going through the world tour, ending the route at Catfish.
This is the full world tour, too. He even got to see the pyramid. So he went around the whole world. Nice save and quit. Now going to go bring our dwarf buddy home.
Yeah. And we're also doing and Signum's adding Ani on top of it, the back of escape route, so that just you can get it. I think this is the last of what we'll be seeing from that. Unless Forgotten Tube haven't gone there, I don't know. But we'll see the turn in here, and this is also one of the things that some runners will tend to leave out if they can do so. It's that mirrorless smith chain. Mirrorless smith chain is very irritating to deal with.
Jinxie Girl, I want to point this out. One of our trackers, Jinxie Girl, big shout out, by the way. Just a side note, Jinxie Girl and Mr. Scruff Ninja Tuna are trackers behind the scenes right now, doing all sorts of work behind the scenes, so we thank you. But Jinxie Girl pointing out in chat that Toupee noped out of Thieves Town after getting the bow and the Titan's Mitts, didn't even wait to pick up the book. So if the book is locking something, either if that's our access to Desert Palace ultimately because the mirror's then there, for example, or I like to call the book the ultimate fetch quest because you have to turn it in at 2 different locations in the world once you have the Master Sword. If anything is there, that's gonna really hurt Toupee later on.
Yes. We have access to desert for one thing, and those tablets. It's really dependent on whether it's really dependent on those factors. It is and also it's from a green pendant thieves town. For all we know, Toupee could just leave that book for a long time, and if it does have something on there, then it is going to be a massive problem for Toupee.
Well, Finch is actually answering one of our questions right now. So we have a cane of Burna that is located in Desert Palace right now. Haven't seen any of the other items. I hope that it's not on Landmo, because I kind of want to see what both the items are in Desert Palace, just to know how. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sorcerer Finch was actually kind of debating, was actually kind of thinking if he had gotten all the items. Going ahead and got that big chest going, so he's okay. There's the other one, half magic.
Yeah, so that's two items. So half magic. Half magic and Cane of Burna. While I am fully a Cane of Burna supporter and think it's the most superior cane in the whole game, it's at best a convenience item. Yeah. So two convenience items in here.
Yeah, Burna is nice. Like if in any mode that's not standard. Mostly because it's nice to have if you have nothing else. If you have no cape and you have pretty much nothing, because it does serve as a damaging weapon. I say everything except for standard random swords, because Burna is very much a not as magic hungry as the Fire Rod, but every time you cast a Burna, it does cut into your magic as a starting cost before it gradually ticks down. So it's all about that conservation of your magic during that escape. And that's partially one of my least favorites of the starts.
Mine too, but for different reasons. P-Train is actually giving us an Eastern Palace check. This is our first dip into Eastern Palace. Oh my.
That is a magic mirror.
That's kind of important, I would say. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. It now opens up Swamp Palace. Pendant Swamp Palace, but it's 6 items, and it is also one of those dungeons where it's really hard to figure out when you want to go in.
I was gonna say it also unlocks boots, which are up on Death Mountain. It unlocks all of the east side of Death Mountain, both a light side and dark side at this point in time. That just blew everything wide open, and it's at a spot that no one else has been to yet. So it'll be interesting to see. Toupee is actually over in Palace of Darkness. So he's in the neighborhood, just in the wrong world.
So considering this as well, the half magic was on the Desert Torch. That is also a spot that P-Train can get. Contrary to what Sorcerer our only runner who has been into a Desert Palace Sorcerer Finch, he probably may not be picking that up if he gets that boots, because he does see it now. Once he gets the mirror and the boots, it might not be picked up unless it's along the way. Which that depends.
Now, interesting that Finch is actually taking that Burna and using it for one of its few logical intended purposes into this spike cave over here. Logically, you need some sort of invulnerability item to be able to get through here.
Yeah. One other thing he is also using is a bottle so that he can conserve some more magic. But it looks like that won't be needed, but it will result in blue mail.
I like it, but I'm also a pansy. And Forgotten Toupee finally closing that logic loop, finding the lamp right before the dark rooms in Palace of Darkness. There at one of the last spike trap rooms. So nice to have a little bit of light. That is also our first fire source. So things like Tower of Hera are now within logic. Things like Desert Palace are now in logic to be able to complete as well.
Yeah. Peach Rain gave us a bit of information about one of our two tablet checks. The Ether tablet is just a piece of heart. Now, that is one of the potential spots that could show up along the way. Oh, that's a sword.
Ooh, where was Master Sword?
Bait chest a pod.
Okay. So pod is proving to be pretty lucrative, all things said.
Yeah.
It's not empty checks. It's not anything that's unlocking anything, because it also looks like we got the powder in there as well. So good checks and the cape as well. Oh my gosh. Like lots of good stuff over here, but nothing to point us into any new direction.
Yeah, cape is nice. Now that you have a cape, you don't really need to worry about the Burna. I mean, Burna still has its place. But Burna with the cape that opens up the bumper ledge. We also have powder as our magic bat check available, along with a free fairy repository. A lot of good conveniences that also serve as one-offs. P-Train has finished up Tower of Hera, as I mentioned it. And so now we're gonna head over to East Ap Mountain. This is, of course, that makes a lot of sense, considering the mirror pickup from P-Train's and Sorcerer Finch will be the third one to pick it up after Signum's.
No, it makes a whole lot of sense right now. P-Train's the only one kind of off doing his own thing right at the moment, and it's showing us all sorts of goodies over here.
Yeah, I do like this route, even if P-Train does not have that fire source. The only fire source that we know of, which was from Pod. It's good. Of course, it isn't a fire rod, which is necessary for Skullwoods, but I mean, if he might be able to pick it up and that makes that the fire source, which is good. There's the mirror from Sorcerer Finch in Eastern Palace big chest, while Forgotten Toupee is going ahead and fighting off Helma. Just going to put in the last couple arrows into that, coming up with 2 hearts at the end of that fight. And there's another sword.
3 of our 4 swords have now been found, which is great for our runners. At least the runners who have found it.
Yeah, and there's our fourth sword. So I don't see P-Train picking up that gold sword from Pod anytime soon. Yeah, and also the blue mail from P-Train too, in Paradox Cave. So this is definitely looking really good. P-Train's route looking really nice. Definitely make the right call here to go up as early as he did.
Yep, and just knocking out all of these checks all simultaneously. Looks like Signums is on his way up at the same time.
Yeah, will also be the second one to get the boots here. And as far as Gomon's concerned, it's just Hookshot, Samaria, and Fire Rod, and Ether, because we found out that Ether was required for Meyer, and apparently also Turtle Rock. At least
that actually makes me very happy, because I do not want access to Turtle Rock. I don't want to step foot in that place if I can avoid it.
It also eliminates the Ether tap. It also eliminates Ether from Pet. Oh my god! Yes, let's go!
Wow.
Yes!
So that is the only logical place that Hookshot can be in Hookshot Cave. Oh my!
My favorite spot for the Hookshot. My favorite spot, because it means it's boots required.
And anyone who doesn't know about access to that particular, like, knowing that you can bonk across to get that, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. This is going to be a very much learning seed for those folks.
Yeah, and this is exactly why. Like, this is the reason why it's one of my favorites, because I think he's got a fairy. I mean, okay, good. That's fine. Yep, good. So, yeah, this is one of my favorite reasons. Like, one of the reasons why I love it, because if you were playing this in the original game and you didn't have a hookshot, which at that point you probably have the hookshot, so what's the point? You just obviously hookshot her over, which is what you're supposed to do. But if you in cases where you don't have, like, if you aren't using the hookshot for anything and just someone forgot, you may not know that the pots are positioned in such a way where you can bonk off of them to get to that chest. So in those cases, you may not, like, if you're coming from the vanilla game, you probably don't realize that. And that is one of the big reasons why, like, that can really mess up a new rando player, even if they never play the vanilla game.
And of course, it's one of those interesting points too, that bonking across gaps. There was, I'm not going to say a debate, but there's always kind of a discussion whether or not that's intended to happen. But there's a gap that can only be accessed in Ganon's Tower that you have to bonk across the gap. So from that, we can kind of extrapolate, well, yeah, bonking across gaps is intended by the developers. So yeah, we presume that we intend to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's also, as Scruff's pointing out too, we considering the ether medallion spot, and it's also right under the doorstep for one thing. Pedestal is completely dead. Samaria and Fire Rod are required for Turtle Rock, and it's a pendant, so it obviously can't be those.
So yeah, we need Fire Rod and Cane of Samaria.
Yeah, and this is actually a really quick seed, even for my seeds. And my seeds have been notorious for being really, really bad.
Well, the interesting thing is there have been a couple very dense dungeons, but most of all of our progression has come through overworld checks, which I'm not used to. Like, I'm used to having to dive one-offs and have very painful crawls through these dungeons to maybe find one item. We've been very, very fortunate. Even a Pendant Thieves Town was front-loaded, and 3 of the 4 items were just right there. Now, that's not to say, wouldn't it be horrible if that pendant had Arcane of Samaria?
Yeah, that is one of the more, that would be definitely a rude awakening. it does also open up another couple of things too. Swamp is now completely wide open. It is 100% completable, and that could also hold it. But the more ruder spot has to be the Green Pen of Thieves Town, considering we've already dipped in it. We got like three big items from it: bow, French vanilla bits, and also arguably book. Because we
Toupee, I feel really bad for Toupee. He's cleared Eastern Palace. He has the mirror. Did not go up to the mountain first to get the boots, and is now going to have to abandon half magic.
P-Train is attempting to hover over that chest. I'm still going to go for it. But this one's a really hard one because you have to change directions twice. And just going to go ahead and just forgo it after the second failed attempt. I mean, again, I don't blame him. It's a very hard hover to pull off. I've seen him pull it off before, but in a race setting where failing that hover twice can and doing it can cost you a whole lot of time. It's best to leave it out and just go through the intended routes. Although then again, this is a community race, so that shouldn't make a difference. But who knows?
Signum's now also getting his hook shot. Well rewarded here.
I still think it's one of my favorite spots, and you also get rewarded for doing this with silver arrows. Yeah, it's one of my favorite spots, and it's also one of the more funnier spots if you like to plan to it, because if you're going off of the expectation that your opponent does not know that particular setup or that particular part of logic.
All right, so we now have runners in kind of all different locations. It does look like Toupee is going to be the first one to actually complete Desert Palace because he's the first one coming in here with the fire source. Still the only one with the fire source up until this point in time, although P-Train is slowly making his way through here, and I got to imagine we'll be picking it up here shortly. And Forgotten Toupee is trying to get some Ice Rod shots also off as going through here. Ice Rod, of course, does do significant damage to Lanmo. The problem is the shots do move a little bit slow. Now, moving on to Hammer and Sword Slashes at this point. It's gotten a little bit out, I would say, off script, although Lanmo is never really scripted either way.
Yeah, one thing to add on top of it is both rods does take 2 shots to kill one of the Lambos. But as you mentioned, the ice rod shots have a slower startup time, so it doesn't. It's best to do it if you're really up close to one of them. Whereas a fire rod, you can shoot it from a distance and it'll still get it as a way to kind of like get a quote unquote meaty shot on it.
Tesura asking in chat, just got here. How bad is the seed so far? Not bad at all. Actually, this has been a very kind seed, all things said. P-Train's rocking with a butter sword and red mail and silvers, and we're under 42 minutes. We're 2 items from Go Mode, needing the Cane of Samaria and the Fire Rod in order to do it. At this point in time, the runners are all kind of just completing the dungeons that they can complete up until this point in time, hoping to run into what they can find. I suspect strongly that we're going to find the Cane of Samaria in probably a very uncomfortable location, like in the middle of Ice Palace, so we're not going to be able to do the Icebreaker.
Yeah, I think the worst spot for the cane has to be in Ice Palace. So Sorcerer Finch is going to go ahead and... actually, I think we're going to be seeing that Ice Palace player right now.
Mr. Scruff Ninja Tuna, I thought we'd had someone check catfish.
Yes, that was catfish. That was a catfish pickup from Sorcerer Finch, and we saw that during the world tour.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. Sorcerer Finch. So it looks like Sorcerer opted to leave that out. Having other plans. We are gonna get that ether tablet under the doorstep from Sorcerer Finch. Again, convenient spot for it, but without the Samaria, there's no way to clear it. Of course, we can always enter it. We have the tools necessary to get through the front door, but we just can't clear it. Honestly, I will say this. It's nice that we're not seeing Samaria this early, because if Samaria was found early, that means Turtle Rock, front of Turtle Rock is available, and that could very much throw the fire rod there if it's either in the front or the keys are lined up in such a way where you can go, oh, it's the laser bridge. Just to kind of throw a bad possibility for that fire rod location.
Oh, and Jinxie Girl also pointing out Bombo's tablet, which will be important in particular for Forgotten Toupee, who abandoned the book, which was in the front four of Thievestown. Now, the front four was pretty stacked. You got 3 items plus the big key. So I don't... It's one of those situations where, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and as far as the Bombos tablet is concerned, we don't know what it is. Because we are hoping that it's not something of importance for the sake of Toupee. So just to kind of add on to it, Toupee had bailed after Bo and Mitz, which I do respect the gutsy call for Toupee. However, with that added book, it does open up it does leave you with a possibility that if the Bombos tablet were to have, let's say, Kane or Fire Rod, then Toupee will not be heading back there anytime soon. And no, powder was not checked.
We do see Sorcerer Finch giving us our first look at Ice Palace. So, first new intelligence really showing up here. It'll be interesting. All right, just some rupees to start off with. So one of our items there located. No icebreaker. Oh goodness.
This is, again, another possibility for the Kane to show up, and that would mean if you are forced to do an Ice Palace bomb jump. And now, because this is kind of the reason why back in the day, before Icebreaker was legalized, Ice was considered a very bad spot because it does take quite a long time. Even in the days of V30, when hints were always on and there was no toggle for it that was added in V31, the only reason why you would ever go into Ice Palace was for the 3 hints. Used to say a long time ago, 3 checks, 3 hints.
Sorcerer struggling a little bit with the Staphos Knights. There are tricks to be able to get both of those down very quickly, but again, because this part of the dungeon hasn't been done by many of these runners in so long, a lot of folks out of practice. I imagine even this particular bomb jump, you have some folks that are some out of practice here.
Yeah, that's the reason why if in those situations, we did see Sorcerer finish it up on the first try. Get that Ice Palace bomb jump the first time. I feel as if you have to also not only learn Icebreaker, but also have Ice Palace Bomb Jump in your back pocket in case of those situations, like what we're seeing here.
All right, so now both P-Train and Sorcerer Finch are both in Ice Palace at the same time. Sorcerer Finch a little bit further along. Worth noting, though, P-Train has 4 crystal dungeons already complete compared to Sorcerer Finch's 2.
Yeah, and this goes to show the routes, the routing decisions that P-Train has made to gain amongst, well, not just like Sorcerer Finch, but also the 4 of the other runners that we're seeing here on the stream. And of course, I mean, all 4 of these are incredible, and that's why you should definitely give them a follow. And they're just these routing decisions that are what making them from P-Train. They're making this getting that 2 crystal lead amongst 2 of the runners and 1 crystal lead from one of them.
All right, and Toupee is now finishing up his clearing of Death Mountain at this point, while Signums does finish off Palace of Darkness as well.
Yeah, so that will be crystal number 3 for Signums, and P-Train is going to now head through here just to get through that fun room that you don't often get to see with the line of pen gators, because of like we mentioned, Icebreaker being the common thing nowadays. All
right, P-Train, again, this is where it does take a long time to get through this, but Sorcerer and Finch is now finally on the other side of this dungeon, and we'll be able to check these other treasure chests, hoping that we're going to get the cane or a fire rod or something. There's our big key. P-Train right on his tail, though.
Okay, it's not on the big key chest, and that would be and that's often the ones that if that were to happen, that would be that's the more cruel spot for it, because like it's in the spot where you Icebreaker, but there's no way you can Icebreaker through that.
So here's the problem I'm seeing, because there's a ton of treasure chests that are in Ice Palace. However, there's only, as I recall, 3 items total?
3, yes.
So we've already seen 2. One was a rupee, and then one was just that piece of heart. So finally, it looks like the last item is going to be on Cold Stare. Or, I don't know, I haven't seen Iced Tea Room yet.
Oh, it looks like I think one of our chat members mentioned we have seen all 3. It could have been from the first one that we... Oh, it was a full heart container from the first one. Okay. So... Okay. So that's good. At least our chat's more is astute on that. So we're now fighting Cold Stare without Keen, and there's no way we can get around with it, but that's fine. Forgotten Toupee will go ahead and get that half magic from off of the Desert Palace. That will also make us have all 4 of our runners will have that. All 4 runners will have half magic, and there was that full heart that was mentioned in the chat. That was from Iced Tea Room. It's just to bring us to our attentions. But that is crystal number 3 for Finch. And P-Train will now head down to the Cold Stare fight. Gonna have to go through the developer intended routes. as much as we hate that the older version of Ice Palace before they tweaked it in the Game Boy Advance remake.
All right, so Ice Palace was not the answer. So we're very quickly running out of locations here.
I think you have to go to Swamp, or you risk, or you go into Mire. Like, you can't, of course you can't clear it, but there's a lot of bad spots where the king can show up. And I think Sorcerer is entertaining the idea of going to Swamp here.
And, I mean, the prevailing wisdom is always, if you can do a crystal dungeon and clear a crystal dungeon, do the crystal dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I just realized this as I was saying the swamp play. I almost completely forgot about the 5-6 crystals. So that's fine, and that's totally fine. I totally get the move, because you're along the way to swamp, and after you clear it, or before you clear it, or after you clear it, depends on the person. You can. But of course, it depends on the person, and depending on the prize, you either do that first or you do that second. If both of our go mode items are here, then that's actually really nice. Like, we don't have to do anything else. We can just end it here, and we can just say that this was a pretty quick, a relatively jet set. Oops, a little too early for that, Sorcerer. But. And at least that ends up being a nice position, but there is not that double here, and not even both of them to begin with. So, but at least that's out of sight, out of mind.
One less thing to worry about. Absolutely. Oh, Finch circling back going, oh no, I've abandoned this for so long. This is where you start to worry, because all of these runners have made gambles and they've abandoned certain locations. And when you're at this point in the race where you only have 1 or 2 items left, you start to get nervous. You start wondering, is it in one of those abandoned locations? And it starts messing with your mind a little bit. And that's got to be what is going through Sorcerer Finch's mind right now as he is doing the escape sequence, which honestly we've had access to for a while now. Question in chat, is Harmless Hellway Fire Rod locked? No, it is not Fire Rod locked. You can get back in there without access to... You don't need a lamp because it's all light rooms, and that's where the lamp was.
Yeah, I've also mentioned too, it's also depending on the... it's also dependent on the keys as well. So I think we got all the keys that were necessary, and that meant that it was Fire Rod locked, that ended up being Fire Rod... Fire Rod locked, or lamp locked, whatever, Fire Rod locked. But that's just me.
All right. Meanwhile, we're continuing on our grand quest. P-Train's checking out what's going on at Catfish. Signums is finishing up. Very clean cold stare fight by Signums, by the way. But we are no closer to finding out the secrets to our puzzle. I'm one of those people that, again, if it's a crystal dungeon that I can clear, I'm going to go clear it. Sorcerer Finch needs to be able to do Desert Palace and Palace of Darkness. I think those are both great options. P-Train, while already having done those, still has, can do Swamp Palace. I would hate that, but it is clearable. I might go treasure hunting in there. P-Train also going to go over here. Looks like is going to be doing a mirror check. Checking a couple locations here in Skull Woods. Hoping that it's located here. I hope he understands, logically speaking, what he's looking for cannot be on the pedestal just from what is pedestal locked. Turtle Rock being prime example there.
I believe P-Train is cognizant on this because of what we found. And on top of that, with the Ether Medallion that was right underneath the doorstep, it pretty much just kind of rings in his mind that pedestal's dead. Doesn't need to check the pedestal unless you wanted to see what it looked like if in a different scenario if we weren't ped dead from our knowledge. But then again, you'd be wasting time, so ignore that.
All right. So Finch also checking out some of these other overworld locations. Graveyard Ledge we've checked. I know we've seen King's Tomb, we've seen Bonk Rocks. I don't know if we've seen K45 on the check on the restream itself, but there are some etc. overworld checks that we had to abandon because we didn't have access to things like the mirror as we're going through. So getting some of those cleared out, trying to avoid dipping into a pendant dungeon. Folks, at this point, it feels like someone's gotta take that dive. And yes. The first person to do that is going to come out a little bit ahead.
Yeah, and it looks like... Okay, so it looks like this will be the... Okay, Hammer Pegs check. That's fine. Yeah, I do believe that I'm saying Swamp as like the next possible move. It's sticking out like a sore thumb, and it really, really isn't good. But given how much we've been going through it, we might just have that happen. P-Train will do the Smith chain here, just because he is late to it, and rightfully so, because that was the mirrorless Smith chain that was done earlier. Had already proved that this wasn't really all that much. But the one thing that P-Train will have knowledge over is Bombo's tablet. Although Sorcerer Finch will be the first one to do it. And this will be pretty much the moment of truth for Tupe. If it's either our Samaria and our Fire Rod, then Forgotten Tupe is in a very bad situation, considering where the book is. Now it's from Green Pen and Thieves Town to jot our memory from this.
Oh, so here's our magic bat cave, and there is the Fire Rod, K45. Oh boy, here we go. Forgotten Tupe is in Meyer, by the way.
Yes. So that's one possibility out of the way, and that does now, but this still does not clear up the potential issue that Tupe has going. Samaria could still very much be on that Bombo's tablet. And so interesting. So here's an interesting thing. The lamp, the mirror was early out of Eastern Palace. You gotta get so you go into Eastern Palace, get the big chest, go to K45, and then you go to Pod to get the lamp, which solves the lamp logic. And thankfully for Tupe, although he doesn't know this, both tablets were nothing.
That's very fortunate for him at this point in time.
Yeah, and also as well, and he does know that Pedestal is dead. He doesn't know the tablets, but at least he could dodge a bullet there, even if he didn't know it. Kane Moth is a possible. Kane on Moth is a possibility. That it's not the worst thing if you played with the logic not to the T, but like but with reason. I get it for Sorcerer Finch because you got it from K45, and you could just run back up to Skull Woods pretty easily because you have Mirror and Flute, and you're right next to a flute spot.
I'm curious, and I hope that our trackers can help us out here. There's only 2 items that are located in Skull Woods. Have we found one or both items yet?
That's actually one thing that I admittedly wasn't too astute about because Scruff's saying that we have not found any single item, and saying that both of them are fire rod locked. If true, then this is kind of important. Okay, so Jossie is saying that there is an item in the back of Skull Woods, so that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Or both. I don't know. If there is both, if both of them are in the back, then is actually more interesting.
And both runners are going to be entering Mothula like within seconds of one another.
You love to see the sync here. Peach Rain and Sorcerer Finch on the same bosses together. Well, Peach Rain gets a quick kill. That's really good. There's our red shield. And yes, to answer a question in the chat from Blind Chaos 95, the big key can be locked behind its own big chest in Skull Woods. There's a handful of like a few dungeons that can do that. Swamp Palace can do it. Thieves Town can do it with a small key, and I believe Herrick can also do it.
Signums is doing it. Signums is making the Swamp Palace play.
Okay, so this is definitely a moment where this will be a big moment if the Kane shows up here. This has been open to us for a while, and both items could have shown up there if we had not known about K45. If Samaria is here, then Signums is in a good position because he'll be right next to the Fire Rod in K45. Which almost reminds me of that moment in last year's main tournament where the run was decided, where it was decided from one player going into K45 first, and the other one didn't. And that also had the Fire Rod. And we also had seen from the big chest that it was 10 bombs, so no Samaria here. Still looking good for Signum, still looking really good. Thieves Town is still open, as much as we don't want it to be. With one item being in the back and the other being on a turn-in. So Peach Rainbow head into Mire. From what I could tell, there wasn't anything there. So, like from when I came back, there wasn't anything there.
No. Nope, nothing going on in Myers, so that's going to be an empty check. Signums, I think, is showing us the way, unless the dream is still very much a possibility, where that green pendant turn in from abandoning Thieves Town is still very much a possibility.
Sorcerer Finch was planning on going to there originally, but seeing that pod was still clearable, Sorcerer Finch got cold feet and just opted to go for pod instead, which is fine. I just always be clearing your crystal, always be crystal dungeons. That is totally fine. Uncle was checked really early in the game, and that didn't really amount to anything. As to answer a question from the chat, but once again, Signums, pretty much all eyes are on Signums here. If the Samaria is here, then he's in a very good position. So as long as it goes to K45. If he doesn't, then this could open up the door for the question of when will all the other runners go to Swamp Palace to get that cane should it show up.
All right, meanwhile, Finch is going in and clearing out Palace of Darkness. Now, no surprises here. We all know what's going to be available. There's actually quite a few items here in Palace of Darkness, one of which, for example, the powder, which is another check that will unlock for Sorcerer Finch. So if he doesn't go and clear those out immediately after.
There it is!
Okay.
All right, now, does he go into... Now, it's no mode for everyone else, but... This is the important question. Does he go to K45? If it doesn't, then when will everyone else go to Swamp Palace? It's on left side swamp. And that's
left side pendant swamp.
Left side pendant swamp. And that alone is bad because not only is pendant swamp, but it's also left side swamp. Signum's making the call to go into Swamp Palace, and then also not on top of that going to do left side swamp first, and that does mean like this could be the big turning point for this race. So again, the question really becomes: if Signums does not go to K45, when do they go to Swamp Palace? When do the runners go to Swamp Palace, pendant Swamp Palace, and if they do they go left side swamp first?
Well, we know the correct answer, and here's where statistics and logic can kind of play havoc with you, because P-Train, for example, has a couple options, and it looks like he's choosing the right one. You have Pendant Swamp Palace, which has 6 total checks, or you have Pendant Thieves Town, which you've already dipped in once, but combined with the green pendant turn in, would have 2 total checks. So statistically speaking, the correct answer should be Swamp Palace. But there's also that fear of, maybe I skipped it. Do you go back to Thieves Town? P-Train is on the right path, though.
Yes, and I think this is definitely a good spot, like a good decision. Now again, there's the question of, does he go to left side swamp first? Because if he just goes to the boss and leaves it, then we're in trouble. All right, Pendant picked up for Signums after finishing up Argus, and then the next thing we're hoping to see is, does he go to K45? Stopping to go over to Bombo Sabwood, that's totally fine, because it makes sense because you're right next to it. But does he opt to go back, or does he opt to flute? If he opts to flute, then P-Train should be in a good position should he go to left side swamp first.
Yeah, the Signums is gonna flute away. Oh, he was right there. I get it.
Yeah, I totally get it. You as well. Mire is open, and it's not the correct call, but always be crystal dungeons, like going on one of those ABCDs. It's a totally reasonable move to make, albeit not the correct one, but it's totally reasonable. But now it becomes the more important. Now basically eyes are on P-Train as to whether or not he goes to left side swamp.
I would like to think he does. If you're in here just to get your treasures, I gotta imagine you'll. Well, I mean, he's certainly not doing it first.
Yeah, and that's the concern. That's a big concern too. Toupee, however, is going to also make the Swamp Palace dive. And if now this is now the situation where if it's basically the same situation that Signums ends up being. Go -2 versus go -1 is also a big factor. I can understand going to the back first if you're go -1. But if you're go -1, do you end up going back or just leaving it? I know some runners, if you're in go -1 and you have Swamp Palace as one other thing you can do, Pendant Swamp for that matter, they opt to leave left side swamp. And in this case, they would get absolutely burned. It's one of those, it's like you mentioned, it's one of those races, it's those situations where if my go mode item is in left side swamp, I lose. If they make that choice.
And here's the other thing, because we picked up a fetch quest item along the way in the mushroom. So, like, where's the temptation at some point to be like, hey, you should go turn this in?
We're going back in.
He's going back in. He's making the right call.
All right, cool. All right, so we'll be seeing go mode in just about a few minutes here. And this is definitely the case here. You're not going to get burned by that. Not going to play, just be not going to be hesitant on the trigger to go ahead and get that to get that left side swamp, just in the favor of those fetch quest items, with the mushroom being the one thing that we got as well. This seed is interesting. This was definitely a very interesting seed. There were two rude spots on this seed. In this seed, the hookshot being on hookshot cave bunk chest being one of those. The other one being the cane, and on left side swamp, pendant left side swamp. And then I think the last, and then if you, in a vacuum, you can say that the K45 fire rod was also rude, but it really depends on the person.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call that particular location rude. I mean, it had just happened to be one of our last location items, and that's fine. Rude is definitely this left side swamp, though.
Yes,
it's disgusting.
Yeah, and this is on top of the fact that the hookshot was on the bunk chest, which makes it even more rude, because of the logic that if you're coming from the vanilla game, like I mentioned earlier, you probably would not know that until you actually play the randomizer, and if that situation came up. And there we go, 118-20. That is go mode for P-Train, and all is left is Mire.
118 go mode, knowing that you only have Meyer to go. You didn't have to step foot into Turtle Rock at all. I'm happy. I'm pretty happy, all things said. It could be a whole lot worse, and we've all seen randos be much worse to us.
And this is actually a good thing for Peachring, considering he got the Fire Rod before the cane. Whereas Signums and Forgotten Toupee have gotten the cane before the Fire Rod, which unfortunately means both players could be baited into Turtle Rock. But in the case of Peachring, he doesn't. It's not too much of a concern because he wouldn't have to go too deep in. Doesn't have to ever worry about Turtle Rock because he didn't have access to it until going to Left Side Swamp, and by that point he was already in go mode, so that became a moot point.
P-Train getting a great early key setup. So he's... Oh, wait, he already cleared this out, right?
Yeah, he was already in the front to begin with, and that's totally fine, because, like, that means he just run through it NMG, save for, just the fact that he already has the keys and the big key. Just gonna run through it with some spooky action nonsense. All I really need to say about spooky action is that the flute's height is dependent on the splash damage of the fire rod, which is part of the fire rod, is dependent on the height of the flute's bird when you are fluting into Meyer or something similar.
Did you blink? Did you miss it? P-Train already just plowing through Vitreous there. Oh gosh, we are already... And that is the 7th and final crystal. Ladies, gentlemen, and all other folks in the Link to the Past randomizer, you know what time that is.
Yep. There's a total of 21 chests and a single torch to make up a total of 22 possible spots where the big key could show up. One of them, of course, has it. So for 1 to 22, get your guesses in the chat where you think it might be. And if you get it exactly or are close to it, then cool. Good on you. Also, Toupee's in go mode.
Hey, good on Toupee getting that item. Looks like he's only got Skull Woods and Misery Mire to go, so he'll be finishing that up very quickly, I got to imagine.
Yeah. And this is actually the situation. This actually ends up being like the worst of the two possibilities. With Signums, yes, he's gonna be leaving out the fire rod, but by the time he finishes up, after he finishes up Meyer and gets the fire rod, he has Skull Woods, which is probably the best situation for that fire rod, like for when the fire rod shows up, because Skull Woods is fast. It's really, really fast. And then Meyer is like probably the slower of the two, depending on if you went in or if you are going through it for the first time. P-Train didn't have to really worry about that factor because he already went in first, and he was just going to go ahead and just clear the front out really quick and just run his way over to a bit Vitreous. But it still takes a bit, considering the size of the dungeon. Okay, GT time. Guesses are going to be closed now. And let's get this show on the road. Going to go to the left side rather. Small key for number 1. We won't see Bob today, but maybe next seed. Or whatever the next seed is if on the schedule, but you could always roll 1. Just maybe next seed. Next open seed rather. It looks like we might be seeing a DM strat from P-Train. Unless we're going the full laps.
2, 3, 4, and 5, and yeah, with the mirror. So this is a Dark Magician route.
Yeah, one of few routes, like one of a few routes that is a DM route. Number 6 is a key. Number 7 is a key. Yeah, this is definitely leaning into the possibility of going either left and full right for the bona fides DM routes, or the more modernized DM routes. There's so many DM routes that it's like really hard to keep. It's pretty much in the name, the whole naming of the route becomes so much of a mess to keep track of. I think the bona fide DM is actually, I believe, just completely leaving out Stalfo's room altogether. I don't remember though. The only thing of note, number 9 was a shovel, so.
Yep. So that is 11 done, and we are now going back to the right side and going to leave that Staphos room at the very end for after we finish up this left side check. Interesting routing. There's Ganon Tower routing by itself has so many different theory crafts associated with it. It's scary and it's weird, and sometimes it just comes down to preference.
Yeah, in some cases when the races are closed, GT routing does decide it. Like it comes down to either preference or what you think is the best move, like the best way to route it. There's no, like, it's either you like either personal preference, or you feel like doing this particular route one day and just hoping if it pays out. Some people will just straight up just go to tile room first after going full right, and it even made more if there's no keys out in the front for the so-called living on a prayer strats.
14, 15, 16, and 17 are no-goes. So we have 18 Bob's Chest, 19, 20, 21 the Staphos room, and then 22 the tile room.
Which is, of course, which would mean if you were to go on a living on a prayer strat, even if you were to go on a living on a prayer strat, even if you got keys, you would get rewarded if you actually did it. I wouldn't advise doing it because it's so risky, but it is a route. It is a route, and it's painful. Number 18 is a blue boomerang.
We have silver arrows. We are perfectly fine for this.
Yeah. Also, ice armors too as well. So yeah, this was a pretty quick one. 1920 is the end result. And the closest one, even though there wasn't a 20, but the closest one happens to be Mr. Scrub Ninja Tuna with 22. Go figure.
No, I don't want to give Scruff Ninja Tuna the credit for that. We know what you were hoping for, Scruff. You don't get praise for being the closest when we know what pain and suffering you were hoping for.
I mean, another way you can really say it is that you can, if we were to not count our crew, the closest one had to be M4A 2000. That would just out of it just be going also to also if you it also would win off of the so-called Price is Right rules, where the closest we get be the closest one without going over. I mean, if you wanted to go for that, so either way, I'll give them those two shoutouts anyway. So good on you. What am I gonna give you rando seeds? Just roll one. Just use Saw's Robot.
Don't you know, internet points are incredibly lucrative right now.
Yeah, but are they environmentally friendly?
Oh God, Link to the Past rando NFTs.
Okay, we're gonna stop that right now. we're gonna stop that right now because I don't want to derail this way too far away. We just want to focus we just want to focus on the tower climb. That's all.
Meanwhile, we have dueling Landmo fights, although one is Landmo 1, the other one is Landmo 2. Meanwhile, P-Train really making his way through the gauntlet very, very quickly. Signum's still looking for that fire rod. Starting to run out of locations. Is starting to. Oh no! Don't do it! Don't do it, Signums.
This is the yeah, this is the worst possible scenario that this could happen for Signums. Honestly, the worst case scenario, straight up. And I get it. The Pennant Turtleback is a very, very lucrative spot, especially after a very, very good spot. Oh no, it doesn't have oh no. Okay. I guess we're gonna go ahead and just run back really quick for this for these. Joy. But anyway, Turtle Rock is not a good okay, fine. Alright, good. We're not leaving. We're not going to Turtle Rock. Alright. I know I'm rambling, but but Turtle Rock is not a good spot. Like, it's not a good spot. And I get it. It's 5 items. You leave, if you go in there, you're going to get basically destroyed. Straight up, because we know where the fire rod is. We don't need to worry about it. Like, we have we know where the fire rod is. Just need to go to it. That's all.
I mean, we have the benefit of knowing that. Meanwhile, Geometry Mage. I don't know if that was a single or a double right to start off with.
That definitely looked like a double because they were on the same frame.
And that was a very hard double to hit as well. He is definitely playing trigonometry with P-Train right now.
So it looked like that was a 2-2-1-1 from my counts.
Yep, that's what it looked like to me.
Okay, so that's fine. We're heading out to GT or TR Ganon.
Yep. Heading over to Ganon, and I tell you what, we are about as well equipped as we can possibly hope for. Signum's finding his fire rod; he will be happy. But P-Train, let's see, we have Red Mail, we have Butter Sword. Just for grins, we also have the Mirror Shield. We have 16 hearts all total, and silver arrows, by the way. This is going to be a very, very quick Ganon fight.
Yeah, this is basically just 100% or vanilla play inventory, and I believe he's got a bottle at the ready in case it goes pretty bad. But it's hopefully, I mean, with what we know is that P-Train is definitely in a good position, even if he dies here. So, like, he doesn't, amongst our restream runners, he's way ahead. Oh,
a Ganon fall with only half a heart left. Oh, that hurts.
So, that was on the last hit, on the last arrow too. From what I could gather, that was, he got hit by a fire bat and held down. Because if you get hit by a fire bat and you're holding an input, you move you get knocked back in the opposite direction of when you got hit. So,
Well, yeah, what it looked like, he fired his arrow before he actually swung his sword as well. So it allowed Ganon to get that fire bat off at the same time. All sorts of unfortunate timing. And also, don't go blaming comms for that, guys. It wasn't all of us. Fully blame Professor Renderer. Totally on him.
of course, I'm the one who rolls all the bad seeds. I mean, to be fair, this wasn't too bad. It could have been worse. Let's be honest here. The hook shot spot was one thing. The cane spot is another thing. It's another thing for me to blame a situation where it's a element by design for whatever reason to have the game like knock you back in the opposite direction if you get hit by a fire bat while holding an input. That's why you have to. That's why if you know that you're going to get hit, hold a neutral input straight up. But that won't stop P-Train. That fault will not stop him. GG's in the chat for P-Train will be able to finish off this race first on our restream with an official race time. Getting that right now.
Looks like official 1:34:58. Worth pointing out, if not for that fall, would have finished in 4th place because Norsk Maddie did finish 18 seconds ahead of him. So that fall did prove costly in terms of the overall. Maybe even cost him 3rd place because a lot of being finished at 1:33:57 as well. Oh, that's a heartbreaker, but still, overall, very well done. And I believe we are already joined in chat by P-Train.
Yeah, that excellent performance. Despite that. Also, hi P-Train. Can now speak.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome for that hookshot spot.
I mean, I wasn't worried about hookshot personally. I was gonna clear it either way, but yeah, it was interesting to see it there.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Again, I said this on the restream, but it's personally one of my favorite spots. Like unironically, because it opens up opens up that logic situation where normally you have the hookshot coming into that cave in the vanilla game, and you never think to use the boots on that one chest because, well, you have hookshot. What's the point? And if you're coming in from vanilla game heading into the randomizer, and if you're still a new player, you would not think to do that until it's too late.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those gotchas.
Oh, that like if you don't know about it, but other way. Other than that, what's your thoughts on this particular seed?
It was. I mean, I it's kind of a long time, but I'm still relatively happy with how I routed it for the most part. Dark Cross was an unfortunate casualty. I never went back for Dark Cross. Meant to do that cleaning up Pyramid Fairy, but after forgetting it there, I was like, yeah, I'm never ever going back for that. The boots knowledge, I think, actually ended up working against me at the beginning. But once I found the fire rod and where the Cane of Samaria was, I don't think it was that big of a deal overall. When I found it on top of Spec Rock, I was like, oh snap, Mirror's going to give me instant boots, and not a lot of people are going to check this super early. So that's really good knowledge. But then I thought, like, after I found the glove on Zora, I realized, I'm like, man, if you find the mirror before you find that glove, of course the first thing you're going to do is go up to Death Mountain. So the boots knowledge is kind of irrelevant. Because of that, I checked some of my Sphere 1 locations. I was a bit more thorough, and I wanted to be checking Sahasrara, checking Front of Escape. things like that. I just normally I wouldn't have checked those. I would have gone straight into the Dark World. But realizing that the mirror pretty much gives you instant boots in this seed, regardless on whether you know where they are or not, I was a bit more thorough and I wanted to be on Sphere 1. But of course, seeing where the Fire Rod was kind of buried in the Smith Chain, and then of course Canis Samaria on the left side of Pendant Swamp, I probably would have done Front of Escape before doing those checks anyways, so it ended up being a wash.
Yeah, and we were mentioning about this earlier too. I'll let you finish the thought because I kind of have a feeling I know what you might be wanting to say here.
I mean, my only other thought would be, the only difficult decision I had, there were a couple of decision points I felt. The rest of it kind of routed itself.
Opted to do. I'm Vitasia, not you, but no, that's fine. You can keep going.
I'm not the star. Go ahead.
Oh, and then in that case, you can continue with your thought, PJ, just really quick. I wanted to interject something.
Yeah. So doing Caneless Ice over Mire, because sometimes, oftentimes in that situation, I actually dab Mire first, but I figured let's just go for Ice since it's a 5/6 crystal and it gives a Pyramid Fairy. I was a bit worried that I was a bit worried once Ice had nothing in it and Pyramid Fairy was empty and Catfish had nothing, Graveyard Ledge, that whole thing. The only other decision point I felt like I had was Thieves Town versus Swamp, but I don't know. I felt like it was safe to do Swamp because there's absolutely no one in their right mind is going to do Pendant Thieves for one item, even if it is the green pendant, especially when you find Bow and Mitts in the front. So I felt pretty safe going to Swamp over Thieves.
Yeah, and I will mention too, Forgotten Toupe has finished second with a time of 1:40:26 on the restream and 10th overall. But I was going to mention one thing too was, this with the Swift that what we mentioned about the Swamp. We mentioned Swamp, Pendant Swamp, left side Pendant Swamp with the Samaria. I mentioned that there's some runners will opt to leave left side Swamp out for a long time. And as we've seen, you went in back to Swamp to get left side Swamp after you were done with the Swamp play, because you went to do Argus first. What I'm asking is, how does that what do you think about that that decision to leave left side Swamp in a general situation where you're go -1 as opposed to go -2?
Well, so there are two things I consider. One of them doesn't apply to this particular seed, but a lot of times if you're going into a place like Swamp Palace, it's somewhat of a gamble in and of itself, because Swamp Palace, Pendant Swamp especially, is a huge investment, right? So you're already kind of making a gamble in saying hey, I think progression is in Pendant Swamp. So just me as a player, it's difficult for me to make that kind of a gamble to say, hey, I bet something's in Pendant Swamp, but then skip left side Swamp. So now you're gambling within your gamble, right? You're already saying hey, I think progression is in Pendant Swamp, but not in these two chests, or if the big chest is lumped in with that, but not in these three chests. So I feel like if you're already going to make, and I'm using air quotes here, the gamble, you might as well commit. In this particular seed, by the time I got to Pendant Swamp, the only thing I had left was Dark Cross and Pendant Thieves, and then the mushroom that I found in Swamp. So it didn't really make sense to I got one item on Pendant Swamp, I got one item on the mushroom, but I have to abandon the Pendant Swamp to check that item, and then the two items in Thieves Town, it's going to take me forever to get to that, and if it's in Dark Cross, I've already lost anyway, so why even bother? So that's kind of what was going through my mind in this seed.
Yeah. And so that's good insight. Yeah. And now, okay, Toupe, thanks for holding out. GG.
GG.
As well.
What a seed.
Yeah, this thing was interesting for sure.
I'm assuming we've already talked about that hook shot placements.
Yes.
Oh.
Meanwhile, I want to welcome to pay, but we got a bit of a race going on here on stream. Sorcerer Finch and Signums are in the same firebar room, climbing up Ganon's tower. We're getting close to the end, in their same room within each other, just neck and neck. This is going to be a very close finish between Sorcerer Finch and Signums.
Yeah. Really quick, as we briefly touched on it too with the placements. I will say that Tabby Cat was also brought up on the chat as well. But Tabby Cat was actually the one who finished first overall with 121.25. Ganon's going wild. Ganon's going wild, finishing at 130.01, which is nuts. Like that is one heck of a god round for the number one finish, considering the situation.
I mean, I can see Fire Rod. I'm curious to know when she got to the Cane of Samaria. Like that's the big question mark. When I saw that time, I was like, man, like I don't know. I can see an early Smith's play, but getting to the Cane of Samaria, like picking Pendant Swamp over some of the decisions I had, seems a bit brave. Like, there's no way I'm doing Swamp before I do Mire. No way I'm doing Swamp before I do Ice. And Ice is kind of a slow full clear without that cane, right? So, just curious, you know?
And see, I think that's where I lost my most time, is when I saw the hookshot placements, I said, oh, it's one of those seeds. And I went straight to Mire, I think, after that, to see what I could find in there. And unfortunately, nothing.
And for the Aga fight, both runners are struggling a little bit. Signums does look like he gets through Aga 2 first, but just... well, we'll see. Sorcerer Finch is still a little bit behind here. But one thing I did want to touch on is, because we've mentioned it with of course, the Cane of Samaria in left side Swamp Palace, left side Pendant Swamp, but also how loaded was that front half of Pendant Thieves as well? 3 items, which the bow, mitts, and the book.
Oh, the book was in there too. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I got the Titan's mitts and decided that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and that was the kind of the big thing that was happening with you. There was that worry that the either Fire Rod or Samaria could have shown up on the book checks, and
awful.
Yeah, and if that was the case, that would have been the worst possible scenario for you.
Soul crushing. So I'm glad that it did not happen.
I mean, we were counting down until, we were thinking, well, Thieves Town was already so loaded. Maybe.
And see, my worst fear was that I was going to find the, and it happened when I found the Samaria. I said, oh no, is Fire Rod and TR, please let that not be the case. Because I'm never going over there. But then I think that was the very next thing I found, so thank goodness for that. I see Tabby Cat's in the chat, and I want to know what Tabby Cat did to get that 120 finish.
Yeah, because that is one thing I'm just dying to know. Anyway. But
that's where you roll a d20 before every dungeon that you do, and it tells you where you're actually going to go. You let a randomizer tell you what you're actually going to play.
And basically, to add on to it, basically Tabby Cat just rolled the nat 20 right there. But aside from that, we have our finishers. Signums finishing at third place with a time of 1:47.37, and then right behind it, right behind him, Sorcerer Finch was 1:47.55, good for 14th and 15th place respectively. To add on to the other finishers that were over, we had Vortex of Doom at 6th, Cool Papa Bell at 7th, James FNX at 8th, Gamachu at 9th. And then after Forgotten Chupe was Ravens at 11th, Josh Bittner at 12th, and Adalor at 13th. So close finish. And we're seeing from across the board, we have some relatively close finishes as well. And here's Signums and Sorcerer Finch, GG's, and what a close finish.
GG.
Was it?
Yeah. Also, you're welcome on the hookshot spot.
Oh my goodness, that was I guess it's called Hookshot Cave for a reason, you know. That's where the hookshot is, always. Between that and then I guess it's not Kana Samaria Swamp, so you know that doesn't quite roll off the tongue quite as well.
Yeah. But so here's one of the things. So but for both of you, what are your thoughts on the seed? Despite that,
you know, I think for me, I just need to avoid. I need to learn Dark Pod so that I can go into Pod and then not have to do Dark Pod at all anyway.
Oh man, that was awful.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, there's the lamp. But yeah, I think my go modes were like Fire Source, like Lamp, Fire Rod, and Cane were my last ones.
Yeah, I would have sworn I was going to find one, either Cane or the Fire Rod in Ice, and then it was nothing.
Yeah.
That was very sad.
Yeah, I did the Ice Pals bombed him for nothing. I'm bitter about that.
But although, you know, it's still the good practice, you know, now with Icebreaker kind of being more the thing, at least it's you know, keeping that fresh. Or something like that. But yeah, like overall, like the seed was definitely pretty interesting. It was interesting having Zora actually be useful.
Right, those are the gloves, didn't it?
Right. So kind of some of the early routing, it was kind of nice to be able to loop in at least a bunch of the checks kind of in like the one-off checks, like all in one go. At least there was that. That's how I had routed. But yeah, and you know, just forget about my Aga fight. It just doesn't exist.
I mean, either way, both ended up like it was still a close finish regardless of the Aga fight. So I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, well, I guess I raced as Abigail. So does Aga turn into Morris, like the JoJo Mart person?
I don't know because I never played Stardew Valley. Well, I played Stardew Valley, but never but I didn't really. I put it down once and never again. I never actually got to any of the dates. Yeah, I guess we can wrap things up here. So, final thoughts for those who are still in our little booth here.
Yeah, you know, it was an interesting seed. It was, I think it rewarded a lot of. It was interesting for what plays like it rewarded, like Left Side Swamp or Hookshot Cave, and then Fire Rod being what, Cave 45, I think.
Cave 45 for Fire Rod, yes.
Yeah, but at least it was really nice being able to eliminate Ped early enough, at least, just because, hey, we don't have the cane. Guess we can't get that pendant.
No, I figured for sure the Fire Rod was going to be on the green pendant because I did the front of Thieves Town and left.
Oh, geez, that front
Everyone
of
did.
Town was insane.
Yeah. So I just figured at that point, okay, that's going to be my last location, and
Yeah, at least the good thing was that since everyone has done it, and we can all agree that no one has actually went into it, at least on the race stream.
Go team!
Yay!
All right.
Overall, I felt pretty happy with how my race went. I had a terrible land mow and terrible cold stare, but besides that, I felt really good about the seed.
Well, yeah. So that'll do it, I think, yeah, that does mark the end of this particular race, but there's still a couple more things here on Speed Gaming that we're going through. Namely, we will be seeing another match of the Super Mario Odyssey Bingo tournament that has returned for 2022. We had earlier. We had finished up. We had a Mega Man 10 tournament, 80% tournament that was over on Speed Gaming 3. That this Mario Odyssey one will happen at Speed Gaming 1. On this same channel, we will also have our Zelda 1 Randomizer weekly race at 10 p.m. I don't know anything about the flags there, and then leading into the next into tomorrow, there will be. As currently as it stands with no channels assigned, there will be 2 Super Mario Odyssey Bingo tournament matchups, possibly a SMZ3 weekly race if we get to it, and of course, and then our next daily, which will be Open Boots Randomizer. So that will be an interesting combination for those who wanting to sign that part up. With that said, give all 4 of our runners a follow. Peachstream, Signum, Sorcerer Revenge, and Forgotten Tupe. They put on an excellent performance, especially with Signums and Sorcerer Revenge being the last ones, being basically neck and neck with each other all the way up to the bitter end. And they definitely deserve a follow. Shoutouts to Jinxie Girl and Mr. Scrap Ninja Tuna for coming up on the tracking side. Of course, Fantasia coming in for commentary. I figured I want to join in as well. Just get the crew back together,
Get all the old crew back together. What is this night, like 2018 or something?
Probably.
We're on a mission from God.
Yeah. But with that being said, thank you all for watching this, and I hope to see you guys for the next one. So take it easy.
Take care, all.
GG, good night.
GG's. Take it easy.